Got No Control Podcast, graffiti podcast for all graffiti writers. I am your host, Ronek. And today, I want to say thank you to everybody that's been supporting the podcast. I appreciate all the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, make sure to join the Patreon. It's $10 a month. You receive stickers signed by the guest on the podcast, and you get to see the episode before it airs. It helps me be more creative and bring in more writers and draw more episodes. With that being said, let me introduce my special guest today, Dazer. What's up, brother?
What's going on? Thanks for having me, Ronek.
Hey, brother, thank you for stopping by, over here, talking some graph and...
Talking shop, yes, indeed, talking shop.
So let me ask you, brother, how has graffiti impacted your lifestyle throughout the years?
Oof. Fuck. Well, I wouldn't be working how I'm working now, professionally and for freelance.
Okay.
If it wasn't for graph, I wouldn't have like the foundation of like seeing something through.
Okay.
Growing up, I saw graph and I didn't necessarily understand it to a certain extent. But once the ball started rolling, it made a lot more sense. And I saw like the steps that you needed to take to get better, right?
Yeah.
So I applied that same thought and theory to everything else that I was doing in life, in school, playing sports, extracurricular activities. I mean, aside from graph.
Yeah.
But all those things, I applied the same like work ethic, you know what I mean?
And where was the younger Dazer at when he seen his very first graffiti, whether it was a tag or a bomb?
The first thing that I like specifically remember outside of like hood strike ups and placazos,
Yeah.
was a mural at a garage, like an auto shop. I lived over by the Coliseum at the time, so I want to say it was either 38th or 39th.
Okay. And for anybody out there that doesn't understand what a placazo is, it's just a tag. And I don't want you, hey, what is that? It's a tag.
Typically gang blocks and or calligraphy of some sort. Yeah. But yeah, so I lived in that area up until I was 10. So I saw a lot of the bus mobbing happening down Vermont, down King, like on the 40 lines, the 41s, went downtown. We busted everywhere. So I always saw like bus mobbers,
Okay.
scribes, mean street tags.
So like the big
tags.
RTD buses?
Yeah, like the old original RTD buses
Okay.
from the 80s and 90s, the box ones and the ones that are a little bit more rounded off.
Okay.
Um,
So how did that make you feel when you were like just being a kid and seeing a guy catching a spot on a bus?
well, number one, I was like, fuck, this is how you do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like at first I had no clue, like as a kid, you're just kind of growing up and seeing things without necessarily having the context of it. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So as I got older, I started realizing, like I guess what the formula, the equation was. You know what I
Okay.
mean? It was a name, it was a crew, it was a number, a year, things like that. You know what I mean? But I didn't necessarily make the correlation of like, oh, these dudes are crews, or these are
Okay.
individual like oneers, or these guys are from this part of town, or they're like out of towners or visitors or whatever,
Yeah.
So that part necessarily didn't click until I got a little bit older.
And what year was this?
When I first noticed and caught my first tag, it was probably like 94, 95. So
And
I
you
was
being
like,
the kid watching the buses, what year was that?
probably before then, you know what I mean? So like early 90s, when,
Okay.
we would go to downtown, like our family would go to downtown, you know what I mean? So at the time, in the early to mid 90s, downtown was murdered. You know what I mean? You saw, mostly bombs,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Very, very few colorful things, you know
Okay.
what I mean? Mostly black, white, gray, silvers, true blues and reds and shit, you know what I mean? It's also because of like limited palette from paint companies at the time, right? Unless you were mixing your own paint.
Definitely. And being around that time, the 90s, did the tag bagging era have anything to do with you?
I tried to stay away from it as much as possible, but because I came in like the later half of the 90s,
Yeah.
for me, it wasn't as prevalent,
Okay.
but there was still the chance of you getting jacked,
Okay.
getting jumped. Like that was always that was always part of the equation. You know what I mean? And as a kid, you don't necessarily think about it. You know what I mean? Because it's not something that, like, or at least for me, it wasn't like it was on my radar, but it wasn't like a point that was going to stop me from doing what it was that I was doing and walking
Yeah.
through neighborhoods and doing that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Now, mind you, I wasn't just writing all like whatever.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I was very respectful of where I was, and I knew where I was and knew what hoods were where, and I knew what to and not to do. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I feel like, that's good to know as a graffiti writer, what to do and what not to do. Because you go ahead and do the wrong thing, write the wrong place, or write over somebody that
Yeah, I mean,
the bomb could be out this time, but your tag is the most readable and it goes down on you.
it could go a million different ways. You know what I mean? And these days, people feel certain ways about what it is that they call their graffiti, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, we're not like writers aren't just these days. Writers aren't just competing with other writers; they're competing with muralists. They're competing with so-called street artists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's even though it's a vast like canvas in terms of like the city,
Yeah.
the spots are still relatively limited. You know what I mean?
And
There's
coming
only
up
so
a
much wall
graffiti
space.
and coming up a graffiti writer, brother, being out there bombing, earning your stripes. How does that make you feel knowing that there's what you call a street artist out there potentially taking a graffiti writer's spot?
Well, first, I was never really a bomber.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like most of my illegal action and or work was just catching tags.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Riding on the bus. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like simple wall tags or throwies and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't until like I started getting older and had more of a concept of what style and piecing was
Yeah.
that I felt like I was ready to actually take it onto a wall.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So for me, the bombing wasn't necessarily like
A stepping ground.
well, it was a stepping ground because you needed to know how to do like bombs, straight letters, hollows, throwies. You
Yeah.
needed to know how to do that in order for you to know how to piece. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So if you didn't learn that part, then your letter structure wasn't going to be as solid as it could be. You know what I
Definitely.
mean? So it's like skipping the tagging and going straight to wild style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. You know what I mean? It just does not
You
work.
can't go from elementary straight to college. You
No,
got to go
you
through
can't.
middle school. You got to go through
Yeah,
high
you
school.
gotta go through you gotta go through those steps. You know what I mean? It was kind of like we were talking earlier, right? Like if you're a kid growing up, you have all this time to dick around and really find what is your style.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have the ability to play
Mhm.
and still be a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas when I started painting, I was like 16 or 17.
Okay.
So I already had what I would have considered good fundamentals in the sense of, okay, I know this has to happen, this has to happen, and this has to happen before I could do my outline, right? Or I needed to buff a wall to make sure that it was clean so
Yeah.
that you couldn't say that, oh, it was dissed or you dissed this or you dissed that.
Or you went over me.
Or when, yeah, exactly. So my mentality was, I mean, aside from burning whatever was on the wall previously,
Yeah.
but also make it look as though like you're not dissing nobody. You know what I mean?
Got you. And you being an LA native, because I know you mentioned you moved all over LA in the 90s. How was it coming up a graffiti writer for you at that time with the gangs being around? Because I'm sure that back then the gang culture was a lot more tough than what it is today.
I can't say what it is today, because I'm not involved. You know what I mean? I've always been a writer.
Yeah.
As far as like street shit is concerned, I've
Yeah.
always been a writer, and that's always been my primary focus, right? With that being said, having the knowledge of what hoods are, I'm going and traveling into and through to
Yeah.
do whatever it is that I'm doing, helped in the sense of like I didn't look like a tourist.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because like in my experience, you're gonna get fucked with if you look like you're somebody that can get fucked with. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
Yeah.
Like the idea is not to look like a target. It's not to look like prey. You know what I mean? If you're minding your own business, head on straight, walking with purpose, 9 out of 10 times, no one's gonna fuck with you. You know, you might have that one person to be like, well, today's the day. You know what I mean? And then you're like, well, I guess it's the fucking day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, I was never interested in that part of writing. I was always interested in the style part, the getting up, and just getting better.
Yeah, definitely. What I mean is more like did it have an impact to where like it would affect you as a writer, where like, oh, that they trip on you because you're a writer, or was it mutual, where like you keep your space and I keep my space?
Um, I mean, as a kid growing up, it didn't seem like being a writer was an issue to the hoods.
Yeah,
But again, that was probably because I was a kid.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Not necessarily a threat in that particular sense. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But at the same time, like I said, I was also very, at least, conscious of where I was and what I was attempting to do wherever it was that I was. You
Definitely.
know what I mean? So I always was conscious of where I was, who I was doing it with, if I was with anybody,
Yeah.
and what the potential ramifications or repercussions of whatever it is that we're doing could be. You know what I mean?
Definitely, bro. Totally understand. And coming up, bro, did you always call yourself Dazer, or was it something before
Oh no, I've had a lot of names over the years.
that?
Some embarrassing ones, some really toy ones. But Dazer has been like the main one that stayed with me. Well, I started writing Days One,
Okay.
and Oneer being a solo writer,
Yeah.
and then I met my mentor Roder 169 while I was doing community service of all things.
Dope. I used to hate community service. Like, man, you pick up the trash.
Yeah, plenty of community service. But I was at the community service I was working at a school. So it wasn't so bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I met him, he schooled me up on proper style, proper piecing, building of skills in sense of like your letter structures, your color schemes, your backgrounds, your characters,
Yeah.
but only in black books at
Okay.
that time. You know, so I was like maybe 14 or 15 at the time.
Okay.
And by that time, I kind of already was experimenting with straight letters and simple letters and trying to fuck around with bubble letters, but I wasn't quite there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So in that sense, that was like the first intro to like a proper apprenticeship, you know?
How important was it for you to have a mentor? Like, did you think it benefit you a lot having that mentor to guide you and be like, hey, maybe you should do it like this or that?
I would have to say, yeah, but I wasn't actively looking for a mentor.
Okay.
It just sort of happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And how does that happen? Does he tell you like, hey, you want me to mentor you? Or is it more like, hey, what's up, bro? Let's paint.
That's a good, well, it was never, come on, bro, let's go paint.
Yeah.
As hard as I tried,
Yeah.
believe you me, as hard as I tried,
Yeah, yeah.
I tried for like 15 to 20 years. It wasn't until recently that we painted together finally.
Oh, recently?
Well, not recently, but
okay.
once he got into RTN
Okay.
is when we finally got the opportunity to seriously paint together.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But prior to that, it was just like black booking it,
Okay.
keeping the study, you know what I mean? Making sure that you got it down before you took it up on the wall, you know?
How would you guys tell each other if you guys wrote back then? Is it like today, like, hey, what's up, you right? Or was it something different back
I
then?
mean, it was always what you write or do you write?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that mostly happened on the bus.
Okay.
It very rarely, at least for me, it very rarely happened while like I was walking anywhere.
Okay.
And I particularly was always a solo writer. I didn't kick it with any other writers growing up or whatever until like high school. You know, middle school and high school. You know, when I started like, okay, I could probably kick it with you. You know what I mean? Just because we have a couple things in common doesn't mean we're gonna be cool, but we got something to start off with. You know what I mean?
And back when you were in high school and middle school, was graph something that was already kind of like something people were doing, or was it kind of like underground?
Oh, nah, people were already doing it. But see, like, that's the thing. Like in the hood, people are always writing graffiti.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? It's just a matter of to what degree they're doing it. You know what I mean? And to what level they want to do it.
Yeah.
You know? So in that particular sense, everybody kind of already knew somebody that was tagging to some degree, right?
Okay.
It might have been hood hit ups or just like regular like writing or whatever, but
Yeah.
somebody you knew had already wrote on a wall.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? So there was common ground there, but what separated everybody was like, are you doing it for style? Are you doing it to get up? You know, like that was kind of like the differentiating stance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I feel like today, like in middle school, I don't think graffiti right now for the middle school kids is that popular to them. I think it's more like if you know someone that does it or you got a family member.
I mean, that could be the case now, but you also have to remember that every 3 to 4 years there's a new batch of writers,
Yeah.
and it's consistent from junior high to high school to like writers that are coming out now, you know, because if you're writing as a young kid,
Yeah.
you're only getting better and you're starting to do better and better things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then up to a certain point, that could be 3, 6, 9 years later, and then now you're finally like doing throwies on a wall, you know what I mean, or
Yeah.
doing straight letters and going out bombing, you know what I mean, because now you've got all this much of practice, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
now you would be a new cycle of writer coming out whenever that year was, you know what I mean.
Gotcha.
So there's always a cycle of new writers coming out every 3 to 4 years. So in that sense, it has to be something that's happening in middle school, high school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The younger you start, the better.
I mean, in my personal opinion, 100%. If you can get all the bad shit out
Yeah.
as a kid, you could be forgiven as a kid
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're just
You're just a
learning.
kid.
You know what I mean? You're learning. And best case scenario is if you stick to doing graffiti, then you'll not just get good, but it will parallel some of the things that you do in life. You know what I
Definitely.
mean?
I agree with you 100%. And at what point did you tell yourself, like, okay, I'm ready to go bomb? No, well, not bomb, but, ready to go hit the wall?
Well, I first started motion tagging on the buses,
What, by motion tagging, you mean?
like catching tags as the
Okay.
bus is moving.
Okay, okay, okay.
Motion tags,
Okay.
right? Not just while it was stopped,
Okay.
right? So that was like my first venture into actually getting up. You
Okay.
know? So I started writing on the buses, doing stickers, catching blade scribes and shit like that. You know?
Stickers were a thing back then, like the actual printed stickers, or like
No, hand dones, all hand dones.
so like the postal stickers.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Your original 228 labels used to be short and long,
okay,
and they used to have a blue strip all the way across.
okay,
And I got the idea from Search by cutting off the blue and just having all the white,
okay.
you know? So
Yeah.
I would just have white and
Definitely.
then just tag on that. And then, like Search, I would use the little blue strip and use like a gold or a silver so that it would pop.
Gotcha.
And that would be it. But like any other sticker that was paper was fair game too. You know what I mean? So
Like a label.
yeah, any label, mailing labels, whatever I could get my hands on. You know what I mean?
Was there somebody that you were seeing up? I know you mentioned Search, but was there someone that you were kind of looking at like, damn, that's kind of dope. I want to get like that, or a little better?
Oh man, there was a lot of bus riders, mostly from the '90s, I guess. Sacred, Saul, Budget, K9er, Al Cappuccino, fucking Unique, fucking the PMKs, the M4Rs.
Okay.
Fucking Sight was murdering when RTD became MTA and the new buses, like the super boxy square ones.
Yeah.
I mean, that fucking was a whole new level of like fucking it up because it was brand new buses. You know what I mean? But like
People were
outside-
still mobbing them.
Oh yeah, people were mobbing them like crazy. You know what I mean? Sight killed it, Digital killed it, Better killed it. Like the UPNs were murdering, the PMKs were killing it, the
Yeah.
M4Rs were still up on them too. You know what I mean? So like it was still a thing in terms of like bus mobbing,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was as prevalent as it was like in the 90s. You know what I mean?
Too, like, what year would you say is kind of like when it slowed down, where like it wasn't as popular to go hit the bus mobbing?
I mean, I don't know how popular it is now. You know what I mean?
Like, I don't think you would see buses now like you would see back then.
I mean, there was a point in like the early 2000s, you
Yeah.
know, between like 2000 and 2006
Mhm.
where they were murdered. Like, but like it also depended upon like what lines you were writing, you know what I
Okay.
mean? So at that point in time, I was like living in Southgate, HP area. So the Bruckles crew was fucking smashing those buses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were battling like the VDs or like the VDs, I think at the time. So like they were just murdering the buses,
Okay.
mop tags that just fucking dripped all crazy and stained, scribes like on the window, like they were killing it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like if you went to like maybe like USC area, they might be a little bit more clean in terms of you wouldn't see stains, but you'll see a bunch of scribes on the window.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was tactical in the sense of like what MTA was doing as far as like an organization and in clearly like separating degrees of fucked upness of these buses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, you know, these guys can have the shitty buses. Like on the Lower East Side, they were still trying. It took a while for them to transition over to the new boxes of
Okay.
MTA style buses, right? And then the first ones to like get the new buses were like downtown and like USC area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's kind of like how they kind of kept it. And then you would, like I said, you would see that certain bus lines would be more fucked up than other bus lines, but you knew the route that they were taking would end up getting them fucked up by the end of the day.
Dope. So is it fair to say that you started bus mobbing?
Yeah, that would be fair to say, but I was never super up.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for me, it wasn't a numbers game, more so as a quality thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, like my philosophy was more based on being a dope style writer.
Definitely.
You know, rather than just getting up. You know, I wanted not just to get up, but I wanted to get up with style.
Gotcha. So at what point did you start actually throwing up pieces on the wall?
It wasn't until like maybe I started fucking around probably in '99.
Okay.
So I was doing like throwies and like bubble letters, you know, like
Yeah.
simple little ones, you know. But I was never really good at doing hollows, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I needed, and still to this day, still need the letter structure to build up off of and make something. You know what I
Okay.
mean? The only thing that I could do hollow are my throwies.
Gotcha.
And I stay in my lane. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are, and I play to that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. You shared with me that you painted the Belmont Tunnel.
Painted the Belmont Tunnel.
Can you share a little bit about that experience?
There were a handful of times that I painted at the Belmont Tunnel. One time I was painting, I guess, what is that? The west wall, closest to the actual tunnel entrance, but right before the vertical brick.
Okay.
And I was doing a pretty simple piece.
Yeah.
Softy, but it was like more of a bomb. But I filled it in more like a piece.
Okay.
But it was very reminiscent of like some 80s styles.
Okay.
At the time, there were a bunch of older heads, Frame being one of them. And he was talking some head, but it was, in retrospect, it was good sound advice.
Okay.
You know what I mean? He was like, essentially, I'm trying to do the line to my D and do it in one stroke.
Yeah.
So I'm just like motioning the line
Yeah.
on the wall. Like, fuck. You know, trying to get comfortable, trying to get into the motion and the rhythm of it. And Frame's just like, just fucking do it. Just pull the line, you know?
Yeah.
And as I'm pulling the line, I fuck up the line.
Yeah.
But I left it fucked up because it was more or less like a reminder for me when I look back at the picture and be like, oh, this is what happened. Don't let it happen again. You know what I mean?
So it was like a learning experience.
Big time. And then, I mean, I would go, me and the homie Dios would go there and we would paint, you know, together and do our shit. And every time it was kind of a good little adventure, you know what I mean? So.
And what was available for you guys to paint with? Was this like a Krylon Rust-Oleum type thing, or was there other things that you guys were using?
I mean, at the time, Krylon and Rusto were probably the most readily available.
Yeah.
Montana was relatively new. Belton was relatively new.
I like Belton.
First time I used Belton, I fuck, man. I didn't think I was ever gonna use any other paint, um, but it was super expensive at the time.
When I heard the three marbles, the three marbles in there, I was like, what the fuck?
We'll see. Belton, as I understand it, started off as a motor, like a car paint company.
Yeah.
And then they just branched off into doing like these specialty colors.
Yeah, yeah.
So the paint quality was super high. The technology that they were using was very, very different and probably like proprietary to some degree outside of like their formula and shit. And that was dope. But primarily I was using Krylons, Rustos, and Montanas
Okay.
when I could get my hands on Montana. But outside of that, fucking Walmart Color Palace, American Accents, American Eagle, Osh paint, everything was fair game.
Yeah.
I didn't really care. Buff paint, brushes, rollers, whatever. Just
Was it
whatever
hard
would
to get a? Was it hard at that time? Like, how would you go about a Montana? Like, did they have a shop or?
Well, at the time, the only real places that you could possibly find Montanas were on Melrose at Workman's.
Okay.
Outside of that, the only other place that I knew of was this hardware store on Western and Sunset called Rompage.
Okay.
And I got hip to that because of Create and the older heads. Like
Okay.
they let me know, like, oh, that's the spot to go to get Krylons and whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So that was like my first experience of actually purchasing paint,
Okay.
you know? But I was also never really a good racker either. So, you know, tit for tat.
So coming up, we're in the generation where the internet was not as big as it is today. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Pre-internet shit. Okay. We're talking like dial-up and modems, you know,
Yeah.
like the first graffiti website that I was introduced to was graffiti.org or Art Crimes.
Okay.
And it was slow as fuck, but everything was so worth it.
That's when you had to
It was-
connect the line to the
the phone
wall,
line, yep.
and then wait for that shit to load up.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. There were many AOL discs that I used to get free time.
Damn, the AOL disc. I haven't
Yeah,
heard that one in
yeah.
a minute.
So I remember a time where not only did we not have a camera on us on a regular basis,
Yeah.
but we also didn't have access to upload it and put it anywhere unless you went to like the library or had a laptop or a desktop at
Okay.
home, right? But even then, you still may not have had internet access.
Mhm.
So you would not be able to put it up or post it anywhere, right?
Yeah.
At that time, it was all word of mouth and who was up on the buses or who was in yards or whatever, you know? And you met other writers by riding the bus or being in yards and running into people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you were like hoping that there would be like a hip hop event, you know, or like Project Blowed was always popping off. So you could go to Project Blowed and find writers. And
Project Blowed was a
in Lamert Park, it was essentially like open mic night.
Like
you know
for
what I mean?
rappers?
For rappers and MCs
Okay.
that were like in the area or whatever. But you also had a bunch of writers that would be there because they also MC'd or broke or DJ'd or whatever the fuck, you know?
yeah.
So they had that going on and you could network and meet other heads like that. But,
Was that something that ever caught your eye, bro? Like b-boying or DJing?
I mean, DJing, yeah, but the equipment is expensive. It's
Especially
bulky. Like
a
to get
technique.
all your records, like it takes a certain amount of dedication, which at the time
Yeah.
I was not invested in. You know what I mean? Like I was focused on being a writer.
Because them technique turntables ain't cheap, bro.
No, man,
Them
nah.
shit-
Them
shit's
needles
like-
ain't cheap.
Yeah.
And
You fuck around and fuck one up, and there goes fucking months of work.
yeah, man. And so like that never was really something that I got into. I respected it and I admired it, but from afar. Same thing with b-boying. I was never really. I'm not a dancer.
Yeah.
Dazer don't dance. You know what I mean?
I boogie.
Thank you, Mac 10. Yeah, so like I never really was like apt to do that. You
Okay.
know what I mean? So I stayed away from those elements of hip hop. And the same thing with MCing. I was never really good at being on the spot and freestyling. Could I write some prose? Yeah, I could do that. can I write something? I sit down and write something? Yeah, I could if I wanted to, but I'd rather write my name. You know what I mean? Like it never fascinated me like graph did, you know?
And now that we mentioned the internet, bro, did 50 millimeter have any impact on you?
Oh, 50 millimeter was the networking tool of the time.
Okay.
We were in the forums. Like, I should have brought my 50 millimeter shirt.
I wonder what happened to them. Is it still active?
50 millimeter is still active.
I tried to go on their website the other day, but it wouldn't load up. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, it's probably just slow.
Oh, okay.
The forums back in when it was like popping and shit. Like
Yeah.
I was on there. Bunch of heads were on there.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And what was the process to get on there back then? Did they just uploading your photos?
Well, there were administrators that ran the site.
Okay.
Too Tall Jamal and Unit. They were like the founders of 50 millimeter.
Shout out those guys.
And then they had like other admins like Gabe 88 and like a couple other heads that would essentially like sort through like what like would be quote unquote approved, you know what I mean?
Okay.
In the queue of like whoever was submitting whatever they were submitting, you know? So there were administrators. Who all the administrators were, I don't know. You know, but you know, I know that there were a lot of like big contributors like Gabe 88. He may
Okay.
not have been a admin or whatever, but he had a lot of photos that he personally took that he uploaded.
And this
You know what I
was this the big networking that's like people will look at it and be like, "Hey man, I seen your stuff on 50 millimeter." Was it like that or was
Well,
it?
yeah, well, for me, when I got my name on 50 millimeter finally in the artist section, I was like, oh shit, finally, you
Yeah.
know? Like, cool. Like that means that I have enough decent work that I could be featured, you know, as an artist or whatever, you know? And that was dope. And then with regards to the networking part, well, we were all in the forums.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's how we were like connecting and bridging with other heads that we may not have necessarily had the chance to meet in person,
Yeah.
but we would fuck around and talk shit or whatever, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
get to know one another through the forums.
Because nowadays, man, you can just go on Instagram. You see someone from the whole other side of the world painting, and you're
Which is
able to-
dope as fuck.
and you'll be able to see. I'm like, oh shit.
Well, that's the beauty of the internet, right?
Yeah.
But that's also the fallacy of the internet too, is that you have all these fucking styles from all over the place.
Yeah.
But nobody can tell you where those styles came from. You
Yeah.
know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, you're definitely right.
So that's where having like a good foothold in your local scene
Yeah.
is beneficial. You know what I mean? Because you never know like what homegrown styles are being used somewhere else because somebody else saw it on the internet.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Like, hey, that guy's kind of using that LA style over there.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there again, like whoever's doing that doesn't have any point of reference for LA, what the lifestyle is in LA or like whatever, you know, they
Yeah.
just like the lettering, which is dope and cool, but at the same time, have some understanding of what and how, you know what I mean?
Definitely, brother. And also, did you ever have like or not have, but did you ever meet like a New York writer or seen some New York graffiti that kind of took an impact on you?
Oh, well, I mean, having Subway art,
Yeah.
I mean, that was the Bible.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, before I started hanging around and kicking it with other writers, that was my like my Bible, my encyclopedia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So, being able to finally have like terminology, you know what I mean, firsthand accounts, experiences, and actual full color pieces that stayed stationary, you know, that I
Yeah.
can reference and be like, oh, this bar or this color scheme
Yeah.
or this fade or this tag style or this character or this or that, you know, kind of made things fall into place a little bit more.
Okay.
So as I started learning more and more about the New York scene, I started, you know, having a better understanding of what these style writers and style masters were. So like in that sense, like Ramelzi, Dondi, Lee, like those were the dudes for me.
Okay.
Futura, Scene, Quick, like those guys like were fundamental in the sense of like they were good at what they were doing, and they were consistent, and like the concepts that they were doing were very different than everybody else. So that's why they stuck out to me. You know
Yeah,
what
I
I mean?
remember seeing that. I remember seeing the books, and Dondi's one of them that stood out to me. I was like, oh shit.
Dondi is so ill. Like the graffiti that he painted when he was painting, uh, comparatively, can stack up against any pieces that are being painted today. 100%.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? The like the ideology of Ramelzi and having armored lettering is something that like I personally took into account when I was going through my mech style. You know what I mean? So like that also like parallel to the shit that I was reading as a kid, and now I'm using it as an adult. You know what I mean?
That's
With
dope.
these pieces, and then with like again with subway art, it was like okay, all the pieces are still. Somebody took those pieces, and then that's what got me into trying to take photos of whatever it was that I
Okay.
could get. You know?
Was there ever a point where you actually bump heads with a New York writer?
No, not personally. The only direct New York writer that I have met, and it's only been until recently, is T-shirt King Fade.
Okay. Okay.
And that was in San Diego just by hapstance. You know,
Okay.
like we were painting at an event by Pose that was put on by Pose 2, and he was gracious enough to host us, and
That's
I got to
dope.
meet him. And
Shout out him for
Pose
showing
2
hospitality.
is also a East Coast writer. You know what I mean? I believe he's from Jersey, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. And he lives in San Diego now, but like that would be that connection right there.
Dope, man. That's a dope experience. And being a Warner brother, coming up a Warner, at what point do you tell yourself, or at what point do you become part of a crew?
Oh shit. Well, like I was writing and I started being part of crews, but they weren't really crews.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like they weren't official. You know what I mean? Like if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I
Like
know.
they were just dudes that were from the neighborhood claiming a crew that was
Yeah.
a big crew.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was part of that crew. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
It was
got
just a
you.
bunch of local boys.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? At that point. But it also got me into trouble, which kind of like gave me the thought that I don't maybe it's not for me.
Yeah,
Maybe being
just-
in a crew ain't was what I need. You know what I mean?
Maybe a
So,
Warner's the way to go.
yeah. So I was pretty much a oneer up until I got into RTN.
Okay. And what year was this when you joined RTN?
I want to say it was 2001, 2002.
Okay.
So I hadn't graduated high school yet.
And how did that come about? You just met somebody there?
Well, actually, I probably got into RTN because of my best friend, Elude. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have made the connection as
Okay.
quickly as
As it
I did.
happened? Okay.
But it was through him that I got essentially introduced to some of the older heads in RTN. And then from there, we started kicking it with Create when he was teaching graph at MacArthur Park. So he
Okay.
was doing through Juice, I believe.
And this is 2001, you said?
2001, 2002, somewhere
Okay.
around there.
Okay.
So like our weekly ritual, Elude and I I lived in the jungles. He lived just further south on King and Arlington. So what we would do every Saturday and Sunday is we would walk from his pad on King and Arlington all the way up to MacArthur Park and back.
How far of a walk was that?
I don't know. It was it was a handful of miles.
Oh, I would have just skated up there.
Well, see, it worked out kind of in the sense that Lou didn't have bus fare,
Okay.
so I wasn't just gonna fucking leave him stranded.
Leave the homie behind.
Yeah,
Nah,
nah,
fool,
fuck that. Nah, we'll mob. We'll mob.
Yeah.
So, but that also gave us the opportunity to catch spots all the way along the way
Yeah.
to and from, you know?
Yeah, that's dope.
So those were our weekly rituals of getting up, you know? And during the week, we were both student athletes. We were both in, like doing practice late. So
Okay.
going home after practice, we got extra practice in, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was nice in that sense that I finally had somebody that I could rely on watch my back, and I wouldn't have necessarily an issue or a problem. You know what I mean?
Definitely, that's dope, bro. Have the road dog ready.
Oh man, finally, you know what I mean? Like finally somebody that was down to do what it was that I was trying to do, you know what I mean?
So what the homie tell you? Like, hey, bro, I'm from RTN. You gotta get down with the crew.
Well, Elude was also not RTN at the time.
Oh, okay.
He was not. He was just he's Yeski's nephew.
Okay.
And Yeski's been a long time RTN head.
Okay.
So that's how we got introduced to Create and the rest of the guys. Well, at least the main heads, you know?
Yeah.
So through that, Create essentially was grooming us by having us do like the workshop, graffiti class or whatever, right? So we were also getting better in that particular sense too. So it wasn't like it was a waste of time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because not only did you have somebody that was available to you, if you had questions, Create would answer, but he also had good lecturing material, like in terms of like the foundations and the fundamentals of style and like different aspects of it and how you can build and how you can grow. So he was really good at explaining that kind of shit.
Shout out Create.
Big shout out to Create. So that kind of put everything together for me, at least at the time, you know? So then once Create saw us like being active and you know, showing dedication that we wanted to learn and get better.
Yeah.
That's kind of when the idea got thrown out, like, oh, they should get down.
Yeah.
You know, so it took a while. We had to bust 3 pieces, like good, clean, solid pieces that everybody agreed upon, like we're good, solid pieces, and that was it.
So you got 100 no's till you got that first yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like in life, right? Like you're gonna have opportunities that you're not always gonna have the ability to take advantage of.
I say it like trying to get that good looking girl, right? Like, yeah, you're gonna tell me no the first time,
but I'm gonna be persistent, girl. Come on, at one of these times you're gonna say yes.
And that's all I need, that one time.
I just need that one. Yeah. One time you're gonna be thirsty enough, and you're gonna be like, yeah, I'll go get a beer with you.
Yeah.
You know.
Get your pockets ready. How did that make you feel, bro? Like being a youngster trying to get into the crew, but like damn, I gotta really bust these 3 pieces. Like this just really gotta look dope.
Well, one, definitely the pressure is on.
Yeah.
Number 2, RTN was a fundamental historic South Central crew.
Okay.
So I was already aware of that. So like back then, the crews that I wanted to be a part of were RTN, K4P, UTI.
Okay.
Those were my big 3.
Yeah.
You know, because they were dope, they were up, and they all had like different styles from one another.
Definitely.
You know, but they were all still relatively in the same area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So by proxy, it was like, fuck, I got lucky. I got put into these situations with these particular fellas.
Yeah.
And now me working at trying to get better at piecing, you know, my end result was I'm sitting at the table with these guys now.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So at the time, I also knew like the other side of it. Like, oh, cool, you're RTN, but when you're out there alone and as still looking young and being young, nobody believes that you're from RTN.
Gotcha.
So there was also like an extra push of being like, you got to come off super dope. Not only because you're young, but you're representing a crew that's established and has a bunch of dope riders in it already.
So by someone just seeing your stuff, like, all right, you're RTN.
Yeah. So like, you know,
because I know some guys, bro, they have a low self-esteem and they'll be like, oh man, I can't make it, and they just give up.
Well, I mean,
but for you, I can say I respect you for keeping the momentum and trying until it's like, all right, he finally said yes to this one.
But see, like all that comes with a bunch of insecurity, bro.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, the insecurity is what always drove me to try and get better.
Okay.
Being so insecure of being around a bunch of dope heads and me feeling as though I don't have the skills to be on the same level or in the same crew as these gentlemen made it that much more difficult for me to figure out where my place was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The insecurities crept and they stay there and they still stay here. You know what I mean? Like, that's never going to go away because there are so many other dope riders that are doper than I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm still gonna go up to a wall. I'm still gonna burn.
Yeah.
And the idea is always to burn everybody else that's on the wall, no matter if they're your homie or not.
Make a statement.
Yeah, exactly. So in that particular sense, like the insecurity of oneself is what drives that 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 perpetual motion of I need to be better, I need to get better at this, or I need to improve this. You know what I mean? It's like every time I take a look at one of the pieces that I do
Yeah.
and I review it, it's like, oh, I missed this or I didn't do this. You know what I mean? Like I planned. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I remember coming up, bro, like, trying to get my style together, and here comes a dope head and goes over me. I wouldn't get mad, no? I'll look at
Right,
it
right.
like, I'm like, all right, bro, one day you're not going to go over me.
Well, see, that's the other thing too. If you keep at it, one day you're gonna be the one that goes over the toy shit. That's just the cycle of it. You know what I mean? And if you're lucky, and if the kid is lucky, then you're both there at the same time, and then you could be like,
I remember you going over me.
yeah.
Now
You know
I'm
what
the
I mean?
man.
Now I'm going over you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to some degree, if your shit is clean and dope, then finally there's that mutual understanding and respect that, oh, okay, you worked your ass off. You know what I mean? I
Salute.
can respect that. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you're going to be toy for a long time. If you start writing graffiti, you are going to be toy for a long time.
And thank you for sharing that, bro, because I feel like people need to hear that. It takes time to develop can control. It takes time to develop an outline, a bomb. And it takes even more time to start doing burners and pieces.
And that's if you got somebody that
Mentoring.
you, but also pushing you in the right direction.
Yeah,
You know what I
because
mean?
if you're over here hanging out with some dudes like, hey, bro, go slash them out. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, you could have a mentor, but he could be doing like all the wrong shit for you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But there again, if you get lucky and you're persistent, you may not be king of anything,
yeah,
but you're gonna be dope at what it is that you do. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely.
And like at the end of the day, I'm doing it for myself. You know what I mean? I'm not doing it necessarily for anybody outside of myself. You know, it's more of a
It
I gotta
pleases-
prove it to myself, you know?
It pleases you as an individual.
Oh yeah, it's cheaper than actual therapy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you'd be going through some shit, and then you could just go hit the one, and you finish and be like, all right.
I feel better now. Yeah. I mean, especially when you paint something big.
Yeah.
When you're painting big, like there's something about painting big that is so relaxing,
Yeah.
but it's stressful at the same time.
Because you got to get it right. You got to look back, and it's like,
Yeah. Like, fuck, okay, damn. Touch it up over here. Touch it up over here.
How the family take it when they found out, my son or...
Oh,
He's
I mean,
looking
when
for-
I got in trouble in school, it wasn't good. But like I got very lucky that both my parents were very supportive
Yeah.
in the sense that they already knew that I liked to draw and I was into that kind of shit like from an early age. So they encouraged it to a certain extent. And as I got into my teenage years, like my mom's was willing to actually go and buy paint for me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, I had to hustle for my money,
Yeah.
but ultimately I couldn't buy it because I wasn't 18. You know what I mean?
That's
so at
dope,
the very
man.
least,
That's dope that she did that for
at the
you.
very least, she was down enough to be like, all right, let's drive up to fucking Sunset and Western.
Yeah, because my mom used to be like, quítame esta mierda de aquí.
I mean, but see, also by that point, I already had so many years of writing on my own shit and fucking up my own shit
Yeah.
that it was obvious that I was going to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So at that point, I think they just gave in, you know? But like I was also doing other things outside of graffiti and outside of getting in trouble that warranted me like at least some favor. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean? Like I wasn't just completely fucking up.
How would it make you feel, bro, if your young ones be like, hey, Pops, I paint? Would that bug you?
I mean, it would be dope because I mean, my kid is 7, and he likes spray paint.
Okay.
He has the little Montana water-based cans for himself.
Okay.
Like he has a whole set to himself. And
Yeah.
He likes to paint like with brushes and shit too.
Yeah.
But he, like right now, he's not interested in graph. You know,
Yeah.
he wants to do colorful shit, characters and whatever the fuck. You know.
Yeah.
So he's not into letters right now. But who knows? All I can do is support him no matter what the fuck. You know.
Yeah, I got you.
Whatever his thing is gonna be, trying to be a good dad would be to just support him no matter what. So if he chooses to do graph, great. But he's also going to learn that it ain't easy and you're going to get knocked out. You know what I mean? You're going to get knocked out and knocked around.
A lot of
doing
shit.
it,
A
you
lot
know?
of shit comes with it, man. A lot of shit comes with it, and it just be like, sheesh, you learn.
Yeah, I mean, but see, like it's a good trial and error thing. You know what I mean? Because you're trying new things, you're experimenting, you're failing, you're falling on your face, but somehow, some way, you're still figuring out like, I could still fucking do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's still something there that's pushing you to be like, I could do this a little bit better. I could do this a little bit faster. I could do it a little bit cleaner. You know what I mean?
Where do you see graffiti, bro, in the next 10 to 20 years? Do you see it coming back to being underground, or you see it more mainstream?
Well, to call graffiti mainstream, I would say is a hard push because I think if it's going to be mainstream, it has to be generally accepted by the public.
Okay.
And graffiti as a whole is not generally accepted by the general public.
Yeah.
So in that particular sense, it'll always be underground.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The difference between from the time that it was born to now is that now there are specific products. They're marketing directly to writers, making products for writers, by writers.
Yeah.
So the dynamic of it has changed, and the economy of it has made it such a large and profitable industry that it behooves these companies to listen to the writers, because the only ones that were the European paint companies. Krylon, Rust-Oleum, they said, fuck you, graffiti writers. We don't want to deal with you. We don't want to sponsor you. We don't want to give you the opportunity to make colors or create colors.
They started
And
changing the formula and all
they
kinds
changed their formula. They
Like,
changed
damn.
their valve system.
Yeah.
Like, they did everything they possibly could to stay away from graffiti and graffiti writers or graffiti artists
Yeah.
or people that use spray paint in an artistic way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So essentially, the American paint companies said, fuck this profit. We don't need this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the Europeans and the Australians ran with it.
Say, well, fuck you guys. We're taking the money.
Yeah. And I mean, poor business sense for Krylon and Rusto,
Yeah.
but excellent because they're keeping their product line small. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And very concise. There are only limited colors. They're not doing anything else. They discontinued a bunch of colors. And
'Cause
they came out with new colors.
Who
but they're all
knows?
shit.
Krylon could have been in the position that Montana is today.
Oh, very easily. But their corporate structure would not allow for them to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the fucked up part, because I would say 99% of the graffiti created up until the 80s was all Krylon and Rusto.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was just
Whether
like,
they try to say we don't endorse it or whatever, but hey, it was being used for
it
this.
was being used. You
And
know
you
what
guys
I mean?
damn well know it.
Exactly. Or else they wouldn't have changed the valve system. They wouldn't have changed all the shit. You know?
What would you tell that kid, bro, that says I'm gonna start getting into graffiti today? What would you say to him?
How old is this kid?
To me, I would say 11, 12.
Okay. So at that particular point, I would probably say that they're just discovering it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're finally putting the pieces together.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Unless they had like an older brother or something that was already in the scene, right? I would personally tell the kid, one, you're going to be toy for a long time.
Yeah.
Number two, enjoy being a toy for a long time. Because that's when you get to make all the mistakes and not necessarily feel like a certain way about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have all this time to like let loose and experiment and figure out what it is that you think A, graffiti is, and B, what style is.
Definitely. You heard it from Dazer himself. Hey, man, I want to say thank you for stopping by, talking some graph with me today. Is there any shout outs you want to, anybody you want to shout out?
Oh, shit. Okay. I mean, definitely my crew, FAT, my Rockin' the Nation family, my UFK fam, and my THC fam. Big shout outs to you. Definitely appreciate being on the team and having the support. My mentors, fucking Rotter169, Create. I can't say that I'd be anywhere without them. You know what I mean? Because they were clearly a guide to where I'm at in terms of like being a graffiti writer or a graffiti painter, whatever. a style writer,
Yeah.
however anybody and everybody wants to classify it as. And definitely big ups to my girl. She
Okay.
definitely encourages me to try and paint more often than I do.
That's a good thing to have a girl that's down with what you like.
Yeah. So that definitely helps, and definitely big ups to you for having the platform and
It's all love, brother.
humbly hosting me and interviewing me, and definitely I hope that this becomes something really good for you, man.
Hopefully, let's see. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out the Patreon. Till next time, I'm out.